what is money? Right now, pause the video. What is money? Define it. Most of you guys could not literally define what money is. Oh, well, money is a store of value. Or, well, money is power. No. These are things that money can give you, or attributes of money. But what is money by definition? Who can create it? How much can they create? What gives them the authority? Right? All these things, you need to learn them. You need to learn them. Why? Because if you're going to pursue money, you better understand that which you're pursuing. Most of you guys don't have money because you don't understand anything about money. You don't know what money is. Therefore, money eludes you. But if you want to attract money, you must first understand what it is. Second is to understand that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? And I talked about this, right? And it's the idea of Newton's third law. Newton's third law dictates that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This happens in the natural world, but it can also happen and apply itself in our life. So people want uphill, we talk about people wanting uphill results with downhill habits. You can't have that. You need to choose what you want to commit to, right? You're going to commit to a shitty life or a great life. But this idea that you can achieve certain results in your life without putting in the specific requirements of work, right, is impossible. There are recipes and ingredient lists to a phenomenal meal, right? And in order for you to achieve that phenomenal meal, which you can, anybody can, right? Anybody can cook Gordon Ramsay's recipes. They might not be able to do it just as well because it requires experience, time, right? These are all factors that play into it. But you can follow a recipe. You might stumble your way to it, but you might have a similar product, right? You might have a similar outcome, and success leaves clues. And if success leaves clues, you need to figure out what that ingredient list is for your life and actualize it. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, which means that if you can control the actions, and if you know that you're going to receive an equal proportion for that which you put in, you're going to be able to measure your outcome, right? So focus on the input, and life will give you in proportion that output. People want the output. People want the money. People want the cars. But nobody wants to put in the fucking work. Nobody wants to put in the hours. Nobody wants to train. Focus on the input and let the universe focus on the output, because by natural law, that will happen.
Do our morning walks. As we're walking here in Lake Geneva, I spot quite an interesting building known as Palais Wilson. Palais Wilson named after President Woodrow Wilson, who was the guy that passed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913 that privatized money, and money no longer became of the people as a means of exchange, but money became debt. And it became debt on a fractional reserve basis. But in 1913, what happened was that the dollar, because of constitutional rights, was still backed by gold. But what happened with fractional reserve banking is they started fractionalizing the gold reserves, and they started printing the receipts for that gold in multiples. So what happened? The British came and the French came, and they started redeeming the paper for gold up until the point where there was no gold left and there was paper. At that point, basically we had to go off the gold standard.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a multimillionaire. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be healthy and have a nice home and take care of your family. But the system will tell you, you have to work, you have to be an employee. When you realize that the way to make money, the way to liberate yourself, isn't through the ways of the system. It's not through a 9 to 5. It's through self-development. It's through the understanding of the game. It's through understanding how the system works and understanding how to exploit the system to your advantage, because there's loopholes that were created intentionally by people that created the rules of the system that you abide by. So ladies and gentlemen, if failure was not an option and you couldn't fail and money wasn't an obstacle and money wasn't real, what would you do? Who would you become? What would be bred out of that desire for greatness? I don't know about you, but in my book, in my opinion, I can't lose, because losing is something that is designed for people that quit and for people that fail. I don't fail, I learn, I reevaluate, I analyze, I cross-examine, I fine-tune, I refine my craft.
And then spirituality, you want to talk about that one? Okay, perfect. Spirituality, as you become more prominent in this fleeting world, you will have the temptation to become prideful. You will have the temptation to become arrogant and self-conceited, thinking that you've achieved what you've achieved by yourself. There's a reason why the poor people worship God more than the rich people. And it doesn't have to do with because the rich people are better or whatever. It has to do with they're checked, right? At all times they're checked by the system, or they're checked by life that, damn, like they're not that great, right? You're not that much. You're worth shit. 'Cause that's the reality. We're all dust. We're not worth anything. We're not that great. And if you can come with humility, right, into this understanding that you're not hot shit, right? Like humble yourself. Then you can have a relationship with God that is based on being teachable. And a lot of people have an interesting relationship with God, and it's a relationship that once again is based off of what they've been told who God is, right? They haven't experienced God. Why? Because they don't care to experience God. If you want to experience God, you have to be intentional. And you can find God in nature, you can find God in books, you can find God in your interactions with other people, but you have to be willing to look for the truth. And in order for you to look for the truth, you have to be humble, because humility is what gives you the teachable attitude and the student's attitude in order to develop a spiritual maturity that is abnormal. The second one is you need consistency. Just like in your physical realm, the spiritual realm requires consistency, right? You have to consistently develop the spiritual side of your life in order for it to become strong. And when people are like, oh, Luke, how can I become like you? All these things are like, well, what do you mean become like you? Oh, well, you know, you talk this way and you believe these things. I'm like, yes, well, you have to instill a life of discipline that you start adapting these habits and this way of life. And then inevitably, it'll just become who you are. So I think people need to focus on being consistent. And I think people need to focus on having a teachable attitude and being humble. And if you don't humble yourself, the world and God will.
All right, when you do easy shit, life gets fucking hard. When you do hard shit, life gets easy, right? Levi.
Geneva, baby.
Dude, why would you cheat? Why would you cheat yourself, right? Why would you cheat yourself from achieving your fullest potential? And it's not just going to the gym, right? It's developing a healthy lifestyle, because you can go to the gym, go home and stuff yourself with 2 fucking pizzas and drink some Mountain Dew. Doesn't mean you're doing anything, because it's not about getting jacked. It's about living a healthy lifestyle, becoming autonomous, and it's about lifespan longevity. Dude, I don't want to be like fucking Ronnie Coleman, who won Mr. Olympia and had all these great achievements, and now the dude can't walk because his legs don't function, right? That to me is not success, right? To him, he's a gym freak, like the dude's a savage, mad respect, but I don't want to live that way. I want to live till I'm 120 years old. Oh my goodness, what, this guy's insane. Well, maybe I know something that you don't, motherfucker. Maybe I think that humans can actually live till they're 120 because I've done my research. So I need to live my life in accordance to achieving lifespan longevity, which is the second idea which we talk about.
For wealth.
It is an energy vampires, bro. Because everything is measured by energy. You are a human resource. It's literally a resource. You're the product. Everything around you is the rich people selling to the product with the labor of the product. Like, they are literally alchemizing wealth out of thin air by deceiving people. It's unbelievable, bro. The level of mastery it's centuries and centuries of generational knowledge that's passed down. Yeah, so that's a great question. That's a great couple questions. The first one is, yeah, I come from a background that has kind of like a Judeo-Christian principle kind of philosophy. And yeah, like most kids, you just go through the motions because you're just a kid. But then, once again, like I mentioned before, I started looking at the results of the lives of the people that were giving me this information, right? So they were telling me who God was, right? But I was looking at their experiences, their marriages, not just my parents, but in general, right? The people around me, the people in those churches, things of this nature. And I was like, whoa, like this person says that God is love, but they treat me like shit. So I don't want that God, right? And I started questioning everything that I believed, which I believe is extremely healthy and anybody should do, because I was comparing it based off of what people were telling me. And people aren't the right measurement, right? You can't hold the standard of God to people because people are always going to fall short to it. So I realized I need to get to know who God is. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to read the Bible for 5 years. And the reason I did that was like under the premise that I needed to not be biased towards the world, right? I needed to go on a self-exploration journey. So I went through the crazy exploration of psychedelics. I went through the crazy exploration of Judaism, which is, it's unbelievable. It's like, there's so much wisdom, so much knowledge there. It's like phenomenal. Went through the Gita, which is the Hindu text. I went through the Quran. I went through a lot of texts. And when it's all said and done, whether I ended up agreeing with a lot of the things that were mentioned or not, I came to realize that there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of truth and a lot of things that are told in that a lot of these people had relationships with God, relationships with a higher power, without necessarily having texts or books. So I was like, can they actually have a personal relationship with God, that God speaks to them personally because they're aware, right? They're in tune. And I was like, let me test that. Let me test having a relationship with God where he actually speaks to me direct. And most of you guys don't experience God because you're so occupied and busy and there's so much noise, right? Because the brain's like an antenna. There's so much noise, so much fuzziness, right? That when God speaks, you don't listen because you're not aware. So it requires this idea of, once it goes back to what I said in the beginning, you need to have enough to focus on yourself full time. Because part of focusing on yourself full time is being able to spend time exploring truth, studying truth, dissecting these things that you believe in, and coming down to conclusions as to how the world works and who's in charge and what are the governing powers in the world, and is God real? And if he's real, why does he allow bad things to happen, right? Or if he's good, why do kids get bombed in Syria 24/7, right? All these existential questions, they're questions that if you have the ability to spend time focusing on yourself, you're gonna be able to get to know God more in the process of learning. And it's a lifelong journey. You know, I think it's like there's a specific book that was written, I forget who the author was, but it's called Pilgrim's Progress. Have you read Pilgrim's Progress? You should read the book Pilgrim's Progress. It's this idea of the Christian's journey, right? He goes through Vanity Fair, he goes through different encounters with different entities, and it's a book that basically takes you through the journey of somebody getting to know God. So I'm in that journey of getting to know God, and it's a lifelong journey. But like I said in the beginning, in the kind of the 3 tenets, you need to be able to be teachable and humble and consistent. So if you can focus on being teachable, humble, and consistent, and you are in tune of what God wants to teach you, then he will.